Most leaders know they need automation. The hard part is figuring out when to actually pull the trigger. Wait too long and you're locked into inefficiency. Move too early and you're automating dysfunction. Today, automate now or wait. One answer costs you capacity. The other costs you time. Let's figure out which one applies to you. Welcome to Binary Business. I'm Will Guidry. This is the show where we take one business decision every episode and break it into a clear binary choice using the ABCD framework. Audience, build, convert, deliver. Today we're starting with one of the most common decisions operators face: when to automate. This isn't about tools or AI hype. This is about capacity, clarity, and knowing when hesitation is costing you more than action would. Let's get into it. Automate now or wait. Every business hits a point where manual work starts slowing things down. You know that feeling. Systems pile up, people are stretched thin, and tasks that should take 5 minutes somehow turn into an hour because someone has to ask 3 people for approvals, copy data between 2 tools, and manually reconcile errors that shouldn't even exist in the first place. Here's what usually happens. You notice the problem, you think about fixing it, you put it on the roadmap. Then someone says, "We've always done it this way," or "Let's wait until Q2 when we have the budget," or "The team knows the workaround, so it's fine." So you wait. And while you're waiting, the manual process becomes institutional knowledge. The people doing it become the experts. And 6 months later, automating it is harder, more expensive, and politically messier because now you're not just changing a process, you're threatening someone's job security. I see this all the time. A client will come in to me with a decision that should have been made 18 months ago, and now the cost of waiting has compounded. Revenue is delayed because approvals are manual. Customer experience is inconsistent because the process depends on who's working that day. And worst of all, the operators who could be thinking strategically are buried in repetitive work that a system should be handling. So the question isn't whether automation matters. The question is whether now is the right time or whether waiting is actually the smarter move. Let's break down both options. Option 1, automate now. Automating now does a few things immediately. First, it increases throughput. Work that used to take your team 2 hours now takes 2 minutes. You're not just saving time, you're unlocking capacity. Second, it reduces errors. Manual processes drift. Someone forgets a step, copies the wrong number, assumes something that isn't true. Automation forces consistency. Third, it frees your people to do higher level work. If your ops lead is spending 6 hours a week reconciling spreadsheets, that's 6 hours they're not spending fixing the constraint that's actually slowing you down. And fourth, this is the part most people miss. It creates usable operational data. When a process is manual, you're guessing. When it's automated, you have logs, timestamps, patterns. You can see where things break. You can optimize based on reality, not on assumptions. But here's the other thing that automation does. It forces you to confront whether your process actually works. If you can't define the steps clearly enough to automate them, then that tells you something. Either the process is too immature, or it's been drifting for so long that nobody actually knows what done looks like anymore. So automating now isn't just about efficiency, it's about creating some clarity. Now let's move to option 0, wait. Waiting feels responsible. It feels like you're being thoughtful, avoiding unnecessary costs, not disrupting the team. And sometimes waiting is the right call. If your process isn't stable yet, if it changes every month, if the steps depend on judgment calls and you haven't been documenting what's going on, automating now just locks you into a bad process faster. But here's what happens when you wait for the wrong reasons. First, the manual process becomes entrenched. The people doing it will build workarounds. They become the institutional knowledge themselves. And now you're not just automating a process, you're replacing expertise. That creates political resistance you didn't need. Second, scaling gets exponentially harder. If you're doing 100 transactions a month manually, fine. But when you hit 500 or 1,000, the manual process doesn't just slow down, it breaks. And now you're automating under pressure, which means you're going to make mistakes. Third, you lose leverage. Every day you wait, your competitors who automated 6 months ago are compounding their advantage. They're moving faster, their data is cleaner, their people are focused on growth, not maintenance. So waiting isn't neutral. Waiting has a cost. The question is whether that cost is worth it. So let's get down to it. What's the real question? The decision comes down to one thing: process maturity. Automate when the current process is stable, repeatable, and it's limiting growth. Wait when the process is still evolving, it's undefined, or depends on human judgment that you haven't systematized yet. Let's walk through the framework so you know which one applies to your situation. A quick note before we dive into the framework. If this kind of clarity is useful to you, subscribe. I'm breaking down one binary decision like this every Tuesday and Thursday. Most of them are harder than this one. A lot of them involve money, headcount, or architecture decisions you're probably facing right now. All right, so let's get into the ABCD framework. A is for audience. This is where you ask, who actually feels the pain of this process being manual? If multiple roles are affected, operations, finance, sales, customer success, that's a signal. When friction shows up across departments, automation creates immediate relief for the entire organization. But if the pain is isolated to one person or one edge case, you don't have a process problem, you have a workflow problem. And the fix isn't automation, it's redesign. Here's a tactical way to test that. Ask your team, if we automated this tomorrow, who would actually benefit? If you get vague answers like, everyone, I guess, you're not ready. If you get specific answers like, ops would stop spending 4 hours a week on this and finance would get accurate data 2 days faster, you're ready. The other thing to watch for is shadow workarounds. If your team has built informal fixes like someone keeping a separate spreadsheet because the official process doesn't work, that's a red flag. You're not automating the real process. You're automating the broken version while the workaround stays manual. Fix that first. Get alignment on what the actual process should be, then automate that. B is for build. This is the systems layer. This is where you ask, is this process actually ready to be automated? Here's how you know. First, does the workflow repeat on a predictable schedule? Daily, weekly, monthly? If it only happens twice a year, automation is probably overkill. Tighten the checklist instead. Second, are the steps clearly defined? Can you write them down in under 10 steps? Can a new hire execute the process without asking 5 clarifying questions? If not, you don't have a process. You have tribal knowledge. Third, are the inputs and outputs consistent? Does the same input always produce the same output? Or does it depend on context, timing, or someone's judgment? If it's the latter, you're not quite ready. You need to systematize the decision-making first. Here's a mistake I see all the time. Companies automate before they simplify. They take a 12-step process that should be 4 steps, and they automate all 12. Now they've got expensive automation running a bloated process. That's not leverage, that's just expensive chaos. Simplify first, automate second. And one more thing, ask yourself, what breaks if we automate this badly? If the answer is customer trust or financial accuracy, you need some guardrails. Don't automate blindly. Build verification into the system. C is for convert. This is the revenue lens. This is where you ask, how does this process affect money? Let me give you 3 scenarios. Scenario 1, manual approvals are slowing down your sales cycle. A deal that should close in 2 weeks is taking 4 because 3 people need to manually review it, and one of them is always in meetings. That's revenue delay. Automate it. Scenario 2, you're manually reconciling invoices, and errors are creating billing disputes that delay payments by 30 days. That's cash flow impact. Automated. Scenario number 3, your onboarding process is manual, and it takes 2 weeks to get a new customer live. Your competitors do it in 3 days. That's competitive disadvantage. Automated. Now here's the counter scenario. You're manually processing expense reports once a month. It's annoying, but it doesn't affect revenue. It doesn't slow down customer acquisition, and it doesn't create risk. That's a convenience problem, not a leverage problem. You can automate it, but it's not going to move the business. Here's the rule. If manual work is delaying money, blocking sales, or creating rework that costs you customers, automation almost always delivers fast ROI. If it's just annoying but not expensive, you're optimizing for comfort, not growth. That's fine. Just know the difference. And here's the math you should run. How much does this process cost per month in labor, errors, and opportunity costs? How much would automation cost to implement and maintain? What's the payback period? If the payback period is under 6 months, automate it now. If it's over 18 months, you're probably solving the wrong problem. D is for delivery. This is where you look downstream. This is where you ask, what happens after we automate? Good automation improves 3 things: speed, consistency, and customer experience. Speed is obvious. Automated processes run faster than manual ones, but speed only matters if quality stays intact. If you're moving fast and breaking things, you're not delivering, you're creating cleanup work. Consistency is underrated. Manual processes drift. One person does it one way, another person does it differently. Customers notice that. Automation forces consistency, which builds trust. Customer experience is the real prize. If automation means your customers get faster responses, fewer errors, and more predictable outcomes, that compounds. They stay longer. They refer more. They trust you to handle complexity. But here's what most companies get wrong. They automate without defining what done looks like. I'll give you an example. A client automated their customer onboarding process. It cut the timeline from 2 weeks to 3 days. Great. Except they didn't define what successful onboarding meant. So they were onboarding people faster, but those customers were churning within 60 days because the automation skipped steps that actually mattered, like training or verifying that integrations worked. They optimized for speed and ignored outcomes. So here's the fix. Before you automate, define success. What does a successful outcome look like? What are the non-negotiable steps? What can be automated? And what requires human judgment? If you can't answer those questions clearly, you're not ready. Document the outcome, build quality checks into the automation, then execute. All right, so here's the call. Most companies wait too long. If your process is stable, repeatable, and slowing revenue or capacity, the answer is almost always automate now. You're not avoiding risk by waiting. You're compounding inefficiency every single day. But if the process is immature, if it's still changing, if it depends shows up in your documentation, tighten it up first. Automate clarity, not confusion. Here's how you know which one you're dealing with. Ask yourself, could I hand this process to a new hire and they would be able to execute it without asking 10 questions? If the answer is yes, you're ready to automate. If it's no, you're not automating a process. You're automating dependency on the people who know the workarounds. And when those people leave, your automation breaks. Fix the process first, then automate. And one more thing, don't automate to avoid hard conversations. I've seen companies automate approvals because they don't want to tell someone their approval isn't actually necessary. I've seen companies automate reporting because they don't want to admit the metrics they're tracking don't even matter. So automation amplifies what you build. If you automate a bad process, you get bad outcomes faster. So use this decision as a forcing function. Ask, does this process actually create value? Or are we just used to it? If it creates value and it's repeatable, automate it. If it doesn't create value, kill it. If it creates value but it's not repeatable yet, document it, tighten it up, and then automate it. Don't automate it out of habit. Automate with intention. Thanks for listening to Binary Business. If you want to score your own automation decision or any business decision, grab the free Binary Decision Scorecard. It's linked in the description. It's the same 7-question filter I use with clients to figure out where the real growth leverage is. In the next episode, automate work or augment people. Same question, different lens. We're going to break down when AI should replace tasks versus when it should support people. Subscribe so you don't miss it. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit like if this was useful. It helps other operators find this when they're stuck on the same decision. This is Binary Business. All signal, no noise.